There you are.
There we are. Hopefully nobody heard you cursing, Charlie. I heard a nasty word under your breath there right before we went on air, but I'm gonna hope that nobody else heard that. We're not rated PG-13 or anything, but
I just started panicking a little bit.
It's all good. Well, welcome to episode 13 of Talking Florida Rugby Occasionally. I'm Ross Davenport, fatback, referee assigner, color voice of Rugby Atlanta and of the Greenville Triumph. I'm going to throw my soccer team in there right now because we're in first place, undefeated through 6 games. That's always fun. And this is episode 13. I was wondering, Charlie, should we have skipped episode 13 and gone straight to episode 14? You know, there's some elevators in certain office buildings that skip the 13th floor, but
for some people, it's a lucky number. So
I would say yes. We don't skip number 13 on the rugby pitch as the outside center position. So I think we'll be okay.
Yes.
Yeah, episode 13. We're going to focus on Tropical Sevens. We're going to have John and Veronica from the Tropical Sevens. It's turned into one of the biggest tournaments in North America for youth sevens. It's grown every year. Unfortunately, we didn't get to have it this year because of the COVID pandemic, but we'll talk to John and Veronica about the success of Tropical Sevens and how exactly they've managed to pull this off. But before we get to them, let's get to our 3 quick things, which we didn't start with last week because we had a very special guest in the UK. What's up, Charlie? You look like you have something to say.
What about our sponsor?
I'm going to get to the sponsor. I'm going to get to sponsors after 3 quick things.
Okay.
So knock these out of the way, then we can focus on the real meat. So first of all, Pro 14 got restarted this past weekend. We had a couple of games, I think a few games on Saturday and one today. Obviously, the league being in Ireland and Wales. So a week after the Premiership got started, we do have Pro 14 back in action there, as Charlie's showing you some highlights. Hopefully we don't get in trouble for showing these. This is Connacht against Ulster. Connacht came out on the winning end of this one. Leinster also won, which normally happens every week when they play. Scarlets and Edinburgh also won, while Ospreys tied the Dragons 20-20. So great to see some more live rugby on your screen for you every weekend now. So if you're not a Premiership fan, if you're a Pro 14 fan, they're back going now. So that's great to see. Number 2, on a sadder note, Stade Francais had to cancel a friendly earlier this week due to they had some players that had previously had the COVID infection and now are coming out that they have some lung lesions as a result of having COVID, which is some really scary stuff. Hopefully that's just a rare thing, and hopefully we don't see too many other athletes coming down with such issues. But obviously it's a scary thing to have to worry about. And speaking of COVID, the third thing we're going to get into is that the Florida Rugby Union held a town hall this morning, along with Talking Florida Rugby. We hosted it here on our StreamYard platform. They went over the return to play guidelines for Florida Rugby. Of course, everybody's asking, when am I going to be able to play rugby here in Florida again? At the moment, there's some sporadic touch being played, probably illegally, because obviously social distancing is still required here and everywhere. And obviously touch rugby does not adhere to social distancing. So we won't be able to play rugby here until the social distancing guidelines have been removed. You can actually practice in certain areas of the state at the moment, but again, social distancing has to be observed. So no contact, no rucking practice, tackling practice, anything like that. You can chuck a ball around and do some fitness stuff in certain areas of the state, but obviously no contact yet. League match play will not start before December 5th. I think we won't get started until January. When 2 clubs have been allowed to return to contact training for a period of 3 weeks, they can schedule friendlies, and then it's going to be 6 weeks total from that beginning before they can play actual league 15s league play. There may be some sevens sprinkled in. We'll see. But yeah, still a long way away from rugby in Florida, unfortunately. But it's good to see some progress in made, and it's good to see Kerry and Evan and some of the other FRU board members online this morning to sort of clear things up for the Florida rugby community, which I think they did in good fashion. Just a waiting game, really all it is. And listen, everybody wants to get back playing rugby, but we have to do it safely. All right, so again, episode 13, we're going to talk about Tropical Sevens, which started back in 2017. But before we do that, I'm going to get to our gracious sponsor of this episode 13, and that would be International Trizone, the official Tropical Sevens equipment apparel partner for all 4 years of the event's existence. They're based out of Ohio, so you'd be supporting an American company. I know when I've been to Tropical Sevens, I know the merchandise sells out very quickly. You have to be very quick to get over to the merchandise tent and snap up your Tropical Sevens gear because it's an awesome logo and looks really good on all the merchandise. They sell out. I know a lot of the stuff every year. So International Trizone doing an amazing job there. If you go to their website, internationaltrizone.com, they sell a ton of equipment. What's that, Charlie?
That was a guy, I think.
Right there. Yes, I was looking at my notes to see the video up. But yeah, see some of the highlights there, and the lines for the merch are always super long as well. So they do customized kits, customized balls. I'm gonna have to order some customized balls. I think Charlie has one of my 7 balls behind him. I just sort of use whatever's cheapest for surfing sevens, but I'm definitely next year going to invest in some customized balls through International Trizone. They also do customized team kit, and they've done it for quite a few Tropical Sevens teams over the years. A lot of the teams like to get individual jerseys for the tournaments sorted out. Obviously, a lot of the teams come from Canada and around the country. They just want like to pick up their jerseys when they get there, I think, at the tournament. So internationaltrizone.com for all of your rugby equipment and apparel needs. And I like their little tagline of "It's a rugby thing." It's ITZ though, which stands for International Trizone. So be sure to check them out, and we appreciate them for sponsoring today's episode about Tropical Sevens. Now, Charlie, what do you? I'm gonna go. I remember when I first heard about Tropical Sevens, I saw the website first, and I said, "This is a very impressive website." So, as Florida rugby goes, I was blown away by this is a pretty serious website. So I knew they were pretty serious about having an excellent tournament, and it's turned exactly into that over the last, I'll say 4 years. Obviously, we didn't have it this year. So we've had 3 incarnations of Tropical Sevens that have actually happened. Do you remember when you found out about Tropical Sevens, Charlie?
Not really, but I was impressed exactly because of that. Just compared to any local tournament that we have here, except in yours, I was impressed because like they had thought of everything. Everything was thought out in advance and organized, and I just saw it like year after year getting better and better. But that was the main thing. They said, "Wow, they have really thought this thing out, and everything is." And then I didn't attend the first one, but the second one I did, and I could see it right there on the ground. Like every field had the admin tent where they sorted all the paperwork stuff, and it was really impressive. That's the main thing, and the venue, of course, is amazing.
No, the venue is perfect, and obviously it takes a team to organize such an amazing event that's grown every year. I think we'll talk about the immense growth of the tournament here with our guests. We have John Siner, live from just up the road in Orlando, just a couple hours up the road from us and Charlie. John, welcome. And then,
guys, thanks for having me.
Of course, thanks for coming on, John. And from a lot further away in Zurich, Switzerland, we have Veronica Muehlhoff. Veronica, I should have asked how to pronounce your name beforehand, so I hope I didn't mangle it too badly.
That was quite good, yeah.
There you go. Coming from somebody who gets their name mangled all the time. Well, Veronica joins us, all the way from Zurich, Switzerland. So we're getting a little late in the evening there, but we appreciate you joining us, Veronica. And she has a very impressive resume that we'll get to in a little bit. Well, let's first get to John. John, let's talk a bit about your sports background. I have your resume in front of me, but I want to let you tell the story a little bit, just how you got into sports and how you ended up on Tropical Sevens.
Well, it's a very long story, but I'll try to make it very brief. I actually started, I was actually a soccer player. I was not a rugby player growing up because we didn't have rugby. So I was a decent soccer player, played Division I in Virginia. and then subsequently made a career out of sports. I actually worked in Tampa for a couple of years for Major League Soccer with a club called Tampa Bay Mutiny. If you could remember back that far.
Oh, yes.
That was my first job in sport, and that led me on to bigger and better things. I spent a year in France with the Football World Cup, Soccer World Cup. And then further along, I went to the International Olympic Committee in Switzerland. After I got my master's in international sport, that led to my job at the International Olympic Committee, where I had an amazing experience in Switzerland, was able to travel the world and got really in depth with the Olympic movement. And then in 2009, I left the Olympics to basically be an entrepreneur, a freelancer, where I started my own suite of projects and services that I ended up doing. And then it eventually led to opening up an event side of the company. And our first event was Tropical 7. So I do quite a myriad of things right now. It's good to be in my position because you have the freedom to do every kind of anything you want. But at the same time, it's as an entrepreneur, you're always looking for your next thing and making sure you have some projects that you're always working on. But right now it's pretty good. Happy to be living in Orlando, which is a great place, great state.
Where are you from originally, John?
So I grew up in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. in Virginia, where I was a youth soccer player. And then I was recruited to play at the College of William and Mary in Virginia, which also had a very cool club team for rugby, which I got to hang out with some of those fellas while I was there too. So my first taste of rugby was college rugby, which was fun. So
there wasn't enough sport in America for you. You had to get out and get into the international world of sport, which is awesome. I mean, you don't see too many Americans doing that. There's enough sports here, it seems, for the Americans to keep the Americans happy. I know now you teach at UCF. Is that correct? You teach there?
So yes, I do teach I teach at UCF, which is here in Orlando at the graduate level. They have a very good sport management program, and I teach the international sport class every year. In fact, it starts this week. But yeah, I was kind of had the international bug from a very young age. My dad was in the Air Force, and we traveled quite a bit when I was young. So I got a taste of the international environment, and it had always been my dream to work abroad. So when I got the chance for France World Cup in 1998, I jumped, and I've been in the international world ever since. And that's probably one of the key reasons why the focus of Tropical Sevens is so international. Obviously, Orlando is a obvious choice for a tourist destination, and we thought it would make perfect sense to basically invite the world to come here to play rugby, and that recipe seems to have worked out well. And I continue to travel quite a lot globally, and I'm able to promote Tropical Sevens as part of that, and that's pretty cool. And it's also nice to have people involved, like Veronica, who's based in Switzerland, and also another partner, Alex Proctor-Pearson, who's based in the UK. And we kind of formed the executive team for the Tropical Sevens, and obviously it's very international.
Now, you said your company does some other events. You said this was the first one. What else is it? Why Sport Matters? Is that the name of your company?
So I started the company Why Sport Matters when I left the International Olympic Committee, and I used that to basically do all of my different projects. So I do a lot of consulting. I work for the IOC on consulting. I work for FIFA and other entities. I've worked on a few big bids. And I do some media work, done some television a little bit in and around the Olympics. I'm supposedly an expert enough to speak on TV. And other things too. I teach, I lecture, enough to keep me quite busy. So that's good.
Charlie, I think I found somebody with more jobs than me, if that's possible. Great stuff, John. We'll get back to you and the start of Tropical Sevens in a minute here. Let's get to Veronica. Now, Veronica, I don't really know where to start with your resume. It's very impressive, especially on the rugby side of things. So you came over to America and to get your degree from Stanford. Let's talk a little bit about how that happened to start with.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for the compliments. I've been fortunate enough to have had a chance to gather a lot of different experience in sports. So yeah, I grew up playing sports always. As a little girl, I played soccer, and then when it came time to choose a college, I was in school in Switzerland. And my family is from Austria, and my older brother went to University of Vienna in Austria. And then I thought, I'd just apply to a few schools in the States just to see what would happen. So I took, the SATs and whatever standardized tests necessary, and did all right, not too badly. So I thought, okay, maybe I could have a chance. And so I applied to Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Stanford, and Berkeley, and didn't really think I'd get into any of them, but I thought I might as well aim high.
Sure.
And then I actually did get into all except Harvard, and so I had a really tough choice whether to come to the States at all or stay in Europe, and which college to choose. And I ended up choosing Stanford University, and I loved it. And that's also where I started playing rugby. I ended up playing for rugby for 20 years, all over, sort of, not all over the world, but in many different places. Started at Stanford, and then I played for the Bay Area She-Hawks, which was a local club up in Northern California. I also ended up playing for the Pacific Coast regional select side, and a little bit in the under 23 Eagles squad while I was still in college and after college. And then when I moved back to Europe, I played for a while in Leicester in England. I played in the Serie A in Italy, which is actually a pretty decent level women's competition, women's championship. And then when I moved back to Switzerland, I also played back here, but that's when I started getting more into the coaching and also into being an administrator in the sport.
Awesome. Now, looking at your resume, or your CV, they'd like to call it in Europe, you did some work with the IIHF, which for those of you that don't know, the International Ice Hockey Federation. You also founded your own company, Million Sports, and you also worked for the Swiss Rugby Union. Now, how big is the Swiss Rugby Union?
The Swiss Rugby Union is small. I mean, Switzerland is a small country, but rugby is a small sport here. Obviously, the main sports are soccer, ice hockey is really big here, and then kind of skiing, all those type of winter sports. And rugby is a small sport here, so that's really kind of back to the grassroots development role. So while I'm working sort of at the top of sports, I'm fortunate enough to work for 6 Olympic Games and in ice hockey and in rugby and in different sports. This kind of brought me back to the roots of really developing rugby at the grassroots. And I feel that it provides like a good balance between the top elite level of sports and really back to the grassroots, which is something also that Tropical Sevens really provides me a great opportunity to do.
No doubt about it. Yeah. Is that why you met John? Was through the Olympics?
No, actually, we met because we are alumni of the same master's program. We both took the what's nicknamed the FIFA Masters in Sports Management. So it's a master's program run by 3 universities in Europe, and it's kind of sponsored or given its nickname by the FIFA, which kind of is the patron of the degree. And then John and I are alumni of the same Masters in Sports Management, and that's how we first met.
Awesome. And also on the resume, most interesting to me, being a rugby guy that I am, was that you're a member of the World Rugby Council since February 2018, I think it was.
Yeah, that's right.
Talk a little bit of that experience.
A couple of years ago, I was lucky enough to be elected to be a council member. So in 2018. World Rugby, as most international federations for most sports, it sort of tends to be a kind of an old boys club with, let's say, the type of people that sit on its council, which is the highest, its highest governing body, tended to be sort of all very similar, and there wasn't very much diversity. And that's when actually World Rugby decided, you know what, we actually want to invite diversity, we want to expand our council to include some females, some more, people of different races, different ethnicities, and also perhaps some younger members than sort of always the same type of demographic. And so with this expansion, they open up a few extra seats, and at the same time, they encouraged or sometimes obligated their members to actually nominate some more diverse candidates for the positions. And then part of that gave me a chance to run for a seat on the council, and then I actually got elected for that.
Awesome. And how much responsibility is that for you? How many times do you have to get together and meet, and how much sort of contact do you spend during the week, say, or during the month, I should say, emails and phone calls? How much time does that take out of you for being on part of the Rugby Council?
Yeah, well, there's normally, let's say in the non-COVID times, there would be 6, 7 face-to-face meetings throughout the year, where everybody flies to one location to meet, and then there is would be a number of sort of online conference call or Zoom meetings, and then also there's always always a number of emails, and that's up to probably a good 3, 4, 5 hours a week on that. But now, obviously, with the current situation, there's less travel going on, so a lot of more meetings happen online. But we're actually luckily able to continue a lot of the work we're doing. And actually, with the whole, I mean, you mentioned it in your introduction, the whole return to play framework's been a huge topic. Obviously, also things we're working on in World Rugby, and I'm obviously council member. I represent Rugby Europe, which is all the European nations on rugby. So in both of those settings, we're working a lot on the return to play frameworks.
Oh, awesome experience. Did you get to travel to Tokyo for the World Cup in October?
Yes. Yeah, I did. I got to be there for a good part of it. And parts of it was having a lot of meetings, but also, of course, we did get to enjoy a few pretty good matches, including the final.
Of course. I was there for 47 hours total. Well, no, it was one day, wasn't it? I got there on Saturday afternoon, left on Sunday afternoon. Unfortunately, England lost, but we won't go too much into that. But it was a great experience, and hopefully I'll get to go back and spend a little more time. I assume you will be planning on being there for the Olympics. Both of you planning on being there for the Olympics next year?
Yeah, well, I was supposed to be in Tokyo now. I would have just flown back a couple days ago, because besides working in rugby, I also work as a consultant to the Olympic organizing committees. And so I was meant to be in Tokyo from June through August. And then things happen differently, but hopefully we'll catch up on that next year.
So you're definitely going to have a busy 2021 then. There's no doubt about it. Let's get to this tournament. So, John, talk to us about how Tropical Sevens began. Take us right back to the beginning.
So, a little bit of context in the background, and the first thing I should say is, after listening to Veronica, I think everybody could understand why I think we made a good choice in making her our director of competitions, because her knowledge and experience in rugby goes way deeper than mine, and I'm confident that she can run the complete competitions at Tropical Sevens in a highly professional way, and much better than I can. So obviously she's a valuable member of our team. But Veronica will remember that it's now probably 15 years ago, when there was changes within the Olympic movement, and they were looking at what sports were going to be on the Olympic program. And there was a vote where softball and baseball were actually removed from the Olympic program, which created 2 open spaces. And the way the IOC handled it at the time, and I was actually a part of this this group that was organizing this process, they essentially had sports bid to fill those 2 spots. And they had a 2-year bid cycle, and it was a lot of activity going on, a lot of politicking, and in the end, golf and rugby sevens became Olympic sports, and that was decided in 2009. And the first time they were going to actually play it would be 2016, which we all saw in Rio Olympics in 2016. And I knew at that time, being so close to it, that would be a big game changer, specifically for sevens, because rugby is played by rugby cultured countries all over the world, but in non-cultured rugby cultured countries, they really don't play it. But now it's an Olympic sport. And all of a sudden you've got countries with Olympic money, not necessarily rugby money, that will be invested into the sport. And it was really, that was the first seed where I thought, well, that's going to be a game changer. A lot's going to happen with the sport. And then when I moved to Central Florida back in 2011, I got introduced to the sport tourism industry, and I just put 2 and 2 together. And I said, well, we need to put together a youth sevens event and make it international, because there's not enough competition for elite level young youth teams, players, as a pathway to get to something like the Olympics and the Rugby World Cup and others. So we knew that this was a recipe that could work. And as we kind of kept going down that path, where we looked at locations and time of year and all that, the puzzle pieces all kind of came together quite nicely. And Alex came on board way back in 2015, 16, and we put it together that year for inaugurating the first event in 2017. And it just really took off since. So obviously the recipe and the puzzle pieces work very nicely together.
So sort of it took sort of 2 to 3 years to sort of get it started from when it was first conceived to the 2017 event.
Well, with any startup, you have lots of challenges. Obviously, first thing, it's a huge investment of time and financial resources, and you have to, educate yourself on who the stakeholders are. One of the things we did that was very important to us is develop relationships. So we established relationships with as many people in the rugby community as possible and the sport tourism industry. And one of the successful things that we did was we created really good partnerships that were able to kind of contribute and help us along. So it's daunting, to be honest, but we had very, very high aspirations, and Veronica can attest to this, but we set a very high bar. We said we didn't want to be your neighborhood rugby tournament. We wanted to be an elite level, high quality tournament that people would want to come to because they knew they were going to get a great experience. And we've worked very hard on establishing that element of it. And I think, Charlie said it at the beginning, but you can see it when you get to the Tropical Sevens. It works. It's high quality. We've thought of everything. You're going to have a positive rugby experience. And we also try to blend in off the field experience as well, which is very important to us.
Yeah, you see on the video now that I know you guys sort of do a pre-combine. I think on the Thursday, if I'm not correct, right? Because Friday, Saturday is Easter weekend, so obviously no play on Sunday. If I think I'm right, so Friday, Saturday, and then teams travel on the Sunday. But you could put this sort of was that something you did from the first year? Was the combine?
So
I can't remember if it was that first year.
The first thing I'll say is we specifically chose Easter week because we knew that that's a good week. As international guy as you are, that it's a good week for travel because much of the world has at least a week off, if not two, and it's a very popular week for touring teams. So we wanted to make it attractive to teams that could come from afar and really get a longer term experience out of it. And we were definitely counting on that fact of having the right time, and that has proven to be the case. The other thing we did is you said right, the competition is Friday, Saturday, but we open up the fields from the Monday. So we offer teams to come in and set up a training camp. And once teams heard about that, they all came in early. So, people are doing 2 days from Monday, Tuesday, all the way to the end of the week. And then we did run the combine every year. And then that's the Thursday before the Friday competition, where it's free to all the players that can come through. It's it's like a skill set challenge thing where we record all their scores. The second year we ended up partnering with a great partnership with USA Weightlifting, who does these kind of things as a collaboration with other sports. And they came in with all their professional testing because they do it basically every weekend of the year. And then another really cool thing, development here, is that USA Rugby saw it. And J.D. Stevenson and his team said, we want to be a part of that. And it's now become an official talent ID session for USA Rugby. So they come in and it's easy for them because they've got the location, they've got everybody here, the community and all the players already on site. They get to interact with them, see them, mark their scores. This year, unfortunately, we had to cancel, but this year we were going to have the biggest and best USA Rugby talent ID session going. And JD will tell you that he plans to do that well into the future. So it really becomes a very attractive thing for players to come to and participate in that because they're going to get seen.
Now, obviously, Omni Champions Gate, it almost seems like a dream facility with the hotel being on site and the number of fields they have there. Did you look at any other venues before settling there?
Yeah, I think we did our due diligence in the lead up to the tournament. I was put in touch with Champions Gate at the time. Back then, they hadn't really done a lot of business. They just created the fields. They didn't really have a lot of events at that time. And it worked out really well that Easter week fit their schedule very nicely because they're a convention hotel and they don't do conventions on Easter week. So we were able to bring in an event that we have a huge block of rooms now and everybody loves to stay there. It's a magnificent resort, but the field complex is amazing. The pitches are fantastic. The grass is kept at the highest, most professional level, and everybody that comes to play at the Tropical Sevens raves about the conditions. It's a great time of year, obviously in Florida, so you're guaranteed perfect weather, perfect pitch conditions. And if you come from a place where you don't get those conditions normally, then Tropical Sevens is like a dream come true.
No doubt. We've obviously got the golf course on site as well, which some coaches may well take advantage of before and afterwards while players are doing their thing. Veronica, talk about how you came on board. Well, John, you can talk about how you got Veronica involved.
Yeah, well, when John first had the idea, and him and Alex had been thinking about it, and actually fairly early on, he actually happened to be in Zurich because he does
Okay.
some work as well for the FIFA. So whenever he's over here, we meet up and have a dinner or breakfast or lunch or something. And then one time he just said, "Look, I have this idea." Or of starting a tournament, and it's a sevens tournament, it's a youth tournament, and this was a couple of years before we even ever had the first tournament. So it must have been 2015 or 16, before the Olympics, I remember, before the Olympic debut. And he said, "What do you think about it?" And I said, "I think it's a great idea. Rugby sevens has so much potential. It's going to be in the Olympics in Rio." This was before then. And yeah, I think it's fantastic. And then he eventually asked me if I had ideas on how to run the competition, because that's my background, competition management in rugby and many other sports. And so we started throwing out a few ideas, and then he asked me if I wanted to get involved.
Awesome. And what's obviously as the competition organizer, what's the most difficult part of your job in organizing the competition side of things?
Well, John already made reference to it. We really wanted it to be a competition of the highest standard. Obviously, there's a lot around Tropical Sevens, but our core product, if you will, our core performance, of course, it's a rugby tournament. And so we wanted that to be really amazing. And so part of that is really that the competition has to be organized at the highest possible standard. And I work for the Olympics, I work for World Cups, World Championships, so I'm used to delivering competitions at the highest quality. And we said, you know what, we really want to aspire to the best possible competitions. These youth players, we want them come in and really to experience like the dream of playing on the most amazing fields and at a tournament organized to the highest standard. And from the beginning, we've tried really to do that, and it started small and then growing bigger and bigger. We tried to keep up that standard and even improve on it year after year.
Yeah, were there any other tournaments that you'd hosted rugby wise, or that you'd visited perhaps to sort of learn about how best to run a rugby tournament? Or how did you, obviously your background was on the Olympic side of things, but were there any other actually rugby specific tournaments you guys looked at as examples of how to run a tournament well?
Well, I know John visited a lot of tournaments in the States, and I actually professionally I am competition tournament director, as they call it here in Europe, for a lot of the European championships and qualification tournaments for under 20 World Cup, and so pretty high level tournaments of youth and adults. So from my side, it was really putting together all that experience onto this fantastic idea of John's. And then John will tell you more about all the research he did of different sevens tournaments in the States and around the world.
Yeah, John, which tournaments did you visit, sort of take bits from pieces from and bring them to Tropical Sevens?
Well, first of all, Veronica says all the right things. You can see why she's on board. There's only a handful of people in the entire world that have the depth of experience that she has. So we're lucky to have, to her on board to make sure that the competition runs as well as it does. So, I did my research. I got to know the Florida community first. And I saw, I tried to go out to all the tournaments and meet the people who were doing things. And that's when I first met Evan at the Florida Rugby Union. And I met, all the clubs. I've been to some RTCs. I've been out to the NAI Sevens and formed a relationship with Mike Kressler, which, subsequently turned into our collaboration with the NHS Sevens Elite Youth Series. And I should also say that I went to a soccer tournament, which is called the Dallas Cup, which is one of the biggest and most successful in the world, and became the aspiration that I wanted for the Tropical Sevens. It's run on Easter week. They have the best club teams from all over the world come in. It's all broadcast on TV. They just do a really, really nice job. Hundreds of teams involved. And I went out there and I spent a week, and I got to know the guy who runs it, and I shadowed him for a week, and I said, that's my model. And a year later, we turned it into that. Granted, the first year was small, but only 2 years later, in our third year, we were over 100 teams and this massive beast of a tournament. So those experiences really helped me develop what became Tropical Sevens.
How many fields do they run Dallas Cup on?
Oh, Dallas Cup runs on multiple sites as well.
Okay.
So they have, I think, 3 or 4 sites throughout the Dallas area, and they also do featured matches inside the Cotton Bowl, which is kind of cool for the players. So, we found Champions Gate, and in the first year, 2017, we used 3 pitches. This year, we would have used all 8 pitches that they have, which is their capacity, and pushed us to the brink. We were going to be 130 something teams competing at, which is the peak of what we couldn't do more.
Right.
So it's interesting for us to see how we grow from here, but it's a really nice, tidy event at the Champions Gate with the 8 pitches. And when you have that many teams, you also have, I think, well over 400 individual matches over the 2 days. We had upwards of 50 referees that were going to be here. And you can see the job that Veronica has to organize all that and make sure that it happens on time. And if a match is 1 minute late starting, Veronica's not happy with it, and she's on it. So it's a very cool, but it's a challenging event to run.
No, definitely running a sevens event is a challenge. Again, I think the most teams we've had, I think, was 30 or 32, and that was enough. So I can't imagine having to organize 130 plus teams. Now, is there potential in the future to look at outside venues as well as Champions Gate if it did get to expand to that big, or are you quite happy just to sit where you are for now?
Well, we've thought of it, and I also get the question, are we going to add senior or adult level brackets as well? And we really shied away from that. The core of Tropical Sevens vision was a elite level youth as a way to get players good competition and be recognized and have it be a pathway to go on to bigger and better things. So we have we have a lot of elite players that come in, but we also have the grassroots and people that want to participate in the tournament. So we are very happy with the model that we have specifically for Tropical Sevens. One thing we may do is actually go younger and invite younger age groups in as they continue to grow, like the under 12s, the under 10s, and so on, and maybe bring them in earlier in the week. And the like a model like Roslyn Park would do, which kind of does it in waves. And you have 2 or 3 days with one group and so on, and then move it throughout the week. One thing we probably would look at before expanding the number of locations for Tropical Sevens is actually making another tournament. So we may do some sort of tropical rugby event for a seniors or an adult type competition. The other thing is, as well, is since we accentuate elite level athletes, when you have a sevens tournament, traditionally it's a festival, it's a party, and obviously the booze culture plays a big part of the adult sevens, and we wanted to stay strictly away from that. So we try to keep our event very let's say clean in that, and mixing those two, we don't want to give the wrong message. We want this to be taken very seriously.
For sure. Now, let's talk a little bit about financing. Is this something that was self-financed, or did you have some support on the corporate side of things initially to get things, obviously just to get things, once you get tournament revenue coming in, it's a little easier, but obviously to get things started, you need a little bit of help. Did you get that just out on your own, or some friends, or some potential corporate people as well?
So the immediate answer is yes, it's all self-funded. But I should say that we've referenced my other partner, Alex Proctor-Pearson, who's he's a Brit based in London. He came on board around 2015, 2016, and he also has an ownership stake in it. And we work very closely together on a collaborative basis. So it was all self-funded, and we've invested quite a bit in this. You could imagine, to get the quality that we want, we really pushed hard to make sure that things were done right, and that took some consideration. So we also have a business model that allows you to scale up over time. It's just kind of like a traditional business. It works better the bigger you are. So as we accumulated more teams, we had more revenues coming in from registration and so on. And we were able to finally kind of get to the point where we're comfortable adding new elements to the tournament. So one of the great things about where we are now is we've done the hard work. the building blocks are in place. We've got
Yep.
awareness all over the world. This year we would have had 15 individual teams coming from Australia. So there's a buzz down in Australia where the teams are talking to each other saying, oh, we know about this tournament in Florida that we're coming to. We had a couple teams from New Zealand that are looking at it, South Africa, obviously Europe, and we had a team from Africa come once. So
I remember that.
We're getting this global recognition, which is exactly what we wanted. So as you do that, the interest becomes bigger. It's more interest in broadcast. There's more interest in from a partnership and sponsor program. And those are really where our growth is coming forward from now. And with that, we can add more things like the combine, like athlete features, bringing in more scouts and so on. And it all kind of grows together. But for the moment, we've done the hard work, and it's really cool where it is now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Obviously, with MLR continuing to expand and more colleges every year, offering scholarships on both the men's and women's side of things, the opportunity to get seen, even by international athletes is an amazing opportunity at Tropical Sevens.
And we've got some really great stories of kids that have come to play Tropical Sevens that have either met or been seen by college coaches, and as a direct result of them participating in Tropical Sevens led them to their next being recruited and going off to college. And that Dallas Cup does a really good job of this, of highlighting the alumni that have come through and played at the youth level. And this is what we always wanted. We will no doubt see future Olympians, future World Cup players coming through and playing at the Tropical Sevens. And already they're all over the college scene. So we're very excited about that part. Yeah,
just being the Dallas Cup of rugby, I think is a great goal. Dallas Cup, as you said, that name is known all over the world. And if we can get Tropical Sevens known in all corners of the globe as well, I think, listen, you're definitely on your way there. Let's go to Veronica on the competition side of things. What's the most difficult part about setting up a rugby bracket and just getting these teams, making sure they're going to be there? I assume communication is a huge part of it, and making sure that these teams know where to be and when to be there. But I think I always find with my little tournament that setting up the brackets and making sure that everybody that says they're going to be there is going to be there. But in your 3 years of running the show, how difficult has it got over the last couple of years, especially with a number of teams?
Yeah, there's a few different challenges. I mean, obviously the biggest workload is shouldered by John and Alex, my colleagues who actually sign up the teams and bring them in, and then huge credit also goes to our wonderful participants who actually help us spread the word, the kids, the players, the teams who come to one of our editions, and they spread the word and have more of their friends and their friends' teams come. So once these teams are signed up to come, then we, like you said, then we build the tournament brackets. And obviously the more teams we have, the more pitches we have, the more challenging it becomes, because to keep that fun, cool format of Easter weekend, where we play Friday and Saturday, and then Sundays off for people to travel or enjoy the area or visit with their family. So to do that, we really have to cram in so many games, because we also want some teams travel from afar, so we don't want them to come all the way to Florida for just a couple of games. So we really want to make sure they get their money's worth, and they really get lots of games, lots of competition against lots of different teams, so they also get to interact with them. So that makes it challenging. And then obviously as the number of teams grows, the brackets get more and more intricate. Different age groups will have different numbers of teams, so we make different groups. We come up with lots of different kind of playing formats. So they just play round robin, so they play playoffs. And we also want to keep it true to the sevens rugby style, which those of you who know sevens rugby really well, there's usually some form of round robin, and then there's some kind of playoff format. So it keeps things really exciting and really fun. So we really try to be true to all that when we develop the competition.
And obviously now you have so many teams coming from Canada. I think it'd be hard to sort of make sure these teams aren't playing each other, in the same bracket, because we just play these guys in Canada. I'm coming all the way to Florida to play these teams, but I can imagine it's quite a task. Is there anything different about doing tournaments here than there is doing tournaments in Europe, Veronica?
Well, on one hand, it's fantastic because sports is sports all over the world. So it really translates amazingly, the sport, the passion for sport having kids or adults play a sport they love, that is universal and translates all over the place. But that said, I've always known the States to be absolutely passionate for sports. The kids, the adults who play sports are passionate about it. Their parents are passionate about it. The referees are passionate about it. The volunteers are. And Tropical Sevens has been absolutely true to that image and to that sort of reputation. So the community has really, really come through amazingly in the right around the Tropical Sevens, right from the first time. And as it grows more and more every year, we get amazing experiences of the players themselves, how they enjoy it, how they interact with us, how they interact with other players, but also their family members and all the many, many volunteers who coach them, who manage them, who take them on that trip, without whom the whole world of sports would hardly be possible.
No doubt. Now, either of you can answer this question, but how has the support from the Florida Rugby Union been since you started this tournament? Now, Evan's been involved quite heavily since the beginning, and obviously now you've got Roy Monk in as your referee coordinator and bringing in this tournament into the sort of referee development circuit in the United States. But how has it been dealing with the Florida Rugby Union, John or Veronica, whoever wants to deal with that one?
Well, I alluded to it earlier, but when we first started looking at doing a tournament, we looked at all the different stakeholders, and obviously Florida Rugby was one of them. So we reached out to Evan, who is the head running Florida Rugby, and we struck up a relationship with him, and it was great to meet him, and he was very important for us to get to know the community. He told me basically how the community works in Florida and what the competition year looks like. And it was good for us because typically that Easter weekend is an off weekend for the leagues and the systems in Florida. So we knew that it was an open date for teams to come and play. I got, as a result of the people that Evan were able to put me in touch with, we had a lot of the Florida teams come in the first year and really formed the backbone of our event. So from the beginning, Evan's been really helpful. I would say since then, the relationship kind of evolved to USA Rugby. So now we work quite closely with USA Rugby, especially in terms of the sanctioning and working with their high performance teams to come in and use it as a talent ID session. So and then the one area where Florida has been instrumental is the referees. So obviously, Ross, you were involved with that, and the Florida Referee Rugby Association has been providing the referees every year and have always done a great job. And Roy Monk, who probably deserves to be mentioned on this call, who runs, I think he's the president of Florida Referees. Yep. He is our official referee manager. So I basically delegated all the referee work to him. And that job has grown tremendously because, like I said, we had up to 50 referees that were supposed to come this year. And that was a big task. And we've got to treat them. We pick them up at the airport. We provide them accommodation and all these services that we have to provide to the referees to make sure that they're going to do a very high level. And one other thing that was kind of cool that we did with referees is we started looking at bringing in international referees. We had an application process through our website, did some promotion, and all of a sudden we had international referees wanting to come to Florida to referee. Roy vets them, make sure that they're up to standard, and they come and they are a part of the international mix. So our relationship with Florida Rugby is healthy. So is it with USA Rugby, and those are the key puzzle pieces that we need to keep together.
No doubt about it. Veronica, if anybody was thinking about starting their own tournament, maybe looking at some of the mistakes that maybe, listen, everybody makes mistakes in building, especially building a tournament up from nowhere. What would you suggest to people that are starting their new tournament about where they really need to get things right, no matter the size of it?
Well, there obviously will always be, as you said, some challenges and some mistakes made, and the most important thing is always to learn from them. But I think to just get the basics right is obviously the most important, which is getting good facilities, good personnel, and good referees. John just mentioned refereeing, and obviously that was crucially important to us from the start, because to have a good level tournament, you need good refereeing, and we've been so blessed with the Florida rugby referees and international colleagues to have that. But some of the mistakes we've made is I think some of the sort of things that are around the pitch. I think on the pitch we were lucky to do pretty well from the beginning. We kind of really put emphasis on getting that core product right, but things that are around the pitch, in terms of infrastructure and temporary infrastructure and overlay, which everybody who's involved in events knows that's the hardest part. And so we've been dialing that in over the years to make sure that it's really up to the same high standard as we've had it, as we've had the rugby itself on the pitch.
Awesome. Yeah, no doubt. Now, John, the pandemic obviously had a big impact on rugby in general, and Tropical Sevens not happening this year. How are you looking towards 2021? Have you got a lot of commitments from these teams that were going to come? Obviously, financially, for a lot of teams, things aren't quite the same now, or going into next Easter, they may not be the same as they were going into, say, before this all happened. But how are you guys planning to sort of work with the pandemic going into next year?
Well, it was interesting for us. It was actually a huge challenge because the dominoes all collapsed at the beginning of March, and we were scheduled for April, and everything was a go as of the beginning of March. We had 130 teams that were all on board. Everything was lined up, all the vendors and everything was happening. And then literally overnight it stopped. So that was a huge challenge for us from the event side, but it was also a huge challenge for all the teams that had made all these plans. Again, we had teams coming from as far away as Australia, and that was challenging to get through, and a very, very disappointing situation for us. But we try to do our best to make sure that that the teams were trying to be being taken care of as much as possible. For those that wanted refunds, we granted refunds. But what was great to see was a lot of the teams said, just put it through to next year. We're going to come back. We come every year, so just put it towards next year. So we already had some buzz and energy coming out of that, knowing that we were going to still have a tournament next year because everybody was still interested in coming. We were hoping that it would have been farther along in the return to play at this point, because now it's becoming harder, especially for teams that were going to have to travel to participate next year. So as far as the 2021 Tropical Sevens, we are a full go at this point. We've got the location locked down, and everything is kind of per normal. It just we need the rugby world to come back. And I think as a result, we might be a little bit more domestic. We might be smaller. We might not get as many teams as we were last year. So we're prepared to be flexible and adapt to the situation. Obviously, our first concern is that making sure that it's a safe environment first. But once we have a green light and go ahead, we have a feeling that the rugby community will be very thirsty for opportunities to play. And knowing that they can come and get a great experience at Tropical Sevens, we have a feeling we'll get a lot of teams that will want to come and play and experience it. So we're very open to that. We're prepared to have a rush of activity as we get closer, but we're quite positive. And I should say it's not just 2021 we're looking at. We're looking at many years down the road. This is an annual event for us. We want to be the top event of its kind in the world where everybody would want to come and play and be seen. So we're not going anywhere with this one. We just hope that we have a good 21 event because the rugby community needs it.
And maybe if I can add to that, in terms of bringing people back to the tournament. I mean, those people who follow rugby also internationally might have seen that actually rugby is right now internationally at the forefront of return to play for different sports, because player safety and player welfare is at the top of the priority list of rugby as a sport, not just in a pandemic, but that's already at the top of everyone's minds just for the sport itself, because just of the way the sport is. And so the same goes for our tournament, the Tropical Sevens. Player welfare and player safety has always been at the top of our list of priorities. And so when, as John said, when sort of everything started happening in March, we did have to take some quick and difficult decisions, but always with the number one priority of keeping everybody safe and getting everybody eventually back to having fun playing in a safe way. And that's also how we're organizing the 2021 tournament and 2022, and looking forward to that. And I have had the luck to be involved in international protocols for safe return to play in the sport of rugby, and all of those world-class standards we will be putting into play at the Tropical Sevens to ensure a safe and fun environment for everybody involved.
Yeah, obviously with Europe being slightly ahead on the sort of pandemic timeline, what sort of state is rugby in there in the return to play? I know obviously it differs country to country. Maybe you can give us an example in Switzerland. What stage you guys are at in the pandemic restart program?
Yeah, in Switzerland, as an example, which obviously is right in the center of Europe, actually, though the way it's going right now, we are scheduled for a restart of our national competitions from the 12th of September.
Okay.
But we've gone through a whole lengthy return to play protocol in many phases, where it started, Ross, like you mentioned before, it started just with small groups staying at a distance, tossing a ball around and doing a lot of fitness training to make sure
Right.
when the day came to return to an actual rugby game, they would be fit. And then we moved slowly into small group training with some contact and all right through the phases. And now we're looking forward to restarting play in just 3 weeks' time.
That's awesome. So yeah, how far ahead are you guys? When did you actually start with the sort of the initial return to play?
Our first phase for Switzerland was starting on May 11th. And a lot of European countries were right around that time, right around sort of early to middle of May, just because the worst of the pandemic had hit a bit earlier here, that the whole of Europe pretty much went into lockdown on the 15th of March. And, you know, that a lot of the smaller countries were able to follow lockdown rules very rigorously. And so that enabled them to slowly start opening things back up fairly early.
Yeah, it seems like we're back at the start now here in Florida with it, you know, just kind of even just talking about now how we're going to return to play, but certainly hopefully by January, I think we'll be back going here in Florida. Now, John, you mentioned a couple of the future, before we wrap things up, you mentioned a couple of things about the future of Tropical Sevens, you know, perhaps starting another tournament, the senior side of things, getting the younger kids involved. What else can we look to? Where will this tournament be in 5 years? Where else do you see being added to this tournament that could make it an even better experience for everybody?
Oh, well, there's a long list of things that we'd like to do. It might be a good time to say one of the things that we did in reaction to the pandemic was our friends at ITZ helped us create some cool stuff that we did. So we made some Tropical Sevens face masks you can see here. And we also produced some pretty cool T-shirts, Tropical Sevens tournament, like this one's the an I'll be back style, and the one where we got quarantined and aqua is pretty cool.
Love it.
And yeah, that's thanks to our friends at ITZ, and we still have all that stuff on sale, including the match balls. Everybody love. We sell out of these every year. Match balls are available on our e-store, so we've actually done quite a bit of sales as a result. And that was a way of a way for us to engage with our community, and that's been a lot of fun. In terms of improving the Tropical Sevens, we still feel like we have so much room to grow. One of the things that was going to be really cool at this year, which we'll do in the future, is we've expanded this concept of having like a village, like an athlete village, where we kind of like this huge area of tents and professional tents, and not the ones that blew down in that major storm that we had last year that we had to adapt to. But a real proper one that has a sponsor attached to it with some animation and fun things happening, in a way for not only for teams to take a break out of the sun, but a way to mix and have a cultural experience as well. We're going to have all of our matches broadcast live streamed. So this year we were going to partner with Flow Rugby. All eight pitches were going to be live streamed. That's a key component for us, is making sure that it can be seen, especially as teams come from farther and farther away. There's a definite audience for it. So we need to be making sure that operationally and technically we can deliver that. And Flow Rugby was there last year, and they were going to do it this year again, but that's something big. What else were we looking at? Just a general improvement of the level of play. The refereeing, this is an interesting one. We had an interesting partnership going into this year, where we were going to work with a company called Back 10 Pros, and they were going to help us not only supply referees, and especially international referees, but we also had 16 referee coaches, one coach per referee team. So you had an additional 16 referee officials that weren't even refereeing. They were just observing and making an experience where if you're a referee that comes to Tropical Sevens, you're going to get treated really nicely, but you're also going to have referee coaching associated with your experience. And that's just another way of adding to the value and making sure that we get the top referees. So there's lots of incremental ways that we can continue to improve. And again, we'd like to offer younger age groups that come in earlier during the week, fill the whole schedule with training all week long, more social activities. We went to the Orlando Magic game a couple of times, and 2 years ago we had over 200 people go to an Orlando Magic game. And making sure that the experience is right for everybody is critical to us. And once you've done that, we've seen it already that people will come back every year because they love it.
No doubt about it. And hopefully, 2021 will be a great success for Tropical Sevens. I know, being a referee myself, I know a lot of the referees, it is the tournament they look forward to going to every year. And as you said, bringing the coaches in, especially for the guys that, listen, some of these referees pay their own way to get to Orlando or Vegas, for an example. And, if you're getting looked at as getting coaching of any kind, it's a great bonus for any referee that wants to come down to Orlando. Well, listen, John and Veronica, I appreciate you spending a good hour with us here on Talking Florida Rugby, and I hope we get rugby going back here on the fields in Florida, and I hope that we get, as you said, it might not be as big of a tournament in 2021, but I'm sure it'll be just as much of a success as it has been over the last 3 incarnations of the event. So I appreciate you taking the time to joining us this evening. Any final words, Veronica or John, before we leave?
Well, from my side, I'd just like to say thanks to you and Charlie for starting this initiative. It's great getting people talking about rugby, specifically rugby in Florida, where there's obviously so much room to grow and to improve. And we hope that Tropical Sevens is part of not only the growth of the sport within Florida, but also in North America and the globe, because I personally think there's a huge, bright future for rugby, and it starts with getting the kids at a young age, getting used to the sport, playing it, and having events, like Tropical Sevens and others that they can participate and see where they can go with the sport. So again, thanks to you guys, and thanks for having us on today.
No, I appreciate it.
Thanks also from my side, and maybe just a word to any rugby players or their families and the rugby community out there who might be listening. This is a challenging time for sport, and especially for our sport as well. But, stay confident, stay happy, stay healthy, and the sport will make a huge comeback. You'll be back on the field before you know it. And until then, take care of yourselves, take care of your communities, and keep each other safe and healthy.
That's right. Charlie, jump on here before we leave, because I have a proposition for you here. I smell some live podcasts from Tropical Sevens next season. I think we can find ourselves perhaps a little room on campus. And listen, there'll be so many people we'll have to talk to on campus next year. I'm booking it already.
I think that definitely going to happen, because we are looking into expanding this proposal of the podcast and turning it. We don't have rugby now, live rugby, so we have to talk about what happened before, what's going to happen, but we can't really cover any rugby. But I think we are going to be doing that when the season comes back, and of course this tournament would be a very good opportunity to do something. Yeah,
start working on it now. Talking Florida Rugby live from Tropical Sevens. I like it. Well, don't forget to I'll not forget to mention our sponsor again this evening, internationaltrizone.com. So once you start getting back to playing here in Florida, look out for them if you're interested in any equipment, apparel. I know they got a ton of stuff on there. I went on the website for the first time today, and it's an amazing website with everything you could imagine. Obviously, you can be able to buy all their stuff at Tropical Sevens next year. But get your John, show us that face shield again. I do like the face mask.
Very cool. I get questioned about this all the time. So you can get those. And a link to our store is on our website, but they come in aqua and step and repeat. It's pretty cool. We got T-shirts, match balls.
It is a great logo. Who can we give credit for the logo and the trophies? Listen, the trophies. I remember when I was there the first time in 2018, I was just amazed at the size of the trophies. I said, John's combined the American love of monster trophies with rugby, and it goes down really well. So listen, Veronica and John, I appreciate you spending the time with us this evening. Obviously, if you missed watching this live, you can check it out on replay on the Florida Rugby Facebook page or on YouTube at rugbyfl.com/TFRO, and it should be available this evening on all major podcast platforms, so you can check it out on your way to work on Monday morning. So again, John and Veronica, thanks so much for spending the time with us. Charlie, great work as always behind the scenes, and we'll see you next week on Talking Florida Rugby. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.